Hey, by the way, great tweets. We got a couple of bank lovers out there. Okay, AppPro, I'm going to show you exactly why this was a backdoor bailout for the banks and it socialized the pain, and why Greece, not the only one that's socialism when it comes to this drama, because we cannot forget. Remember, the global economic meltdown in those subsequent years, Greece was the anchor. Every single morning we woke up, it was, what's going on in Greece? What's going on in Greece? Why did Greece move our markets, and why did Greece move the world markets? The problem wasn't a contagion of countries per se. We weren't worried about them falling like dominoes. We were worried about Western banks falling like dominoes. Back in April of 2010, Western banks had $236 billion in Greek sovereign debt. French banks had $75 billion. German banks, U.S. banks. The world had too much of this junk on their books. The banks had it. It was not a country crisis. It was a bank crisis. And I guess you could say, well, we had the ultimate example of the public-private partnership because we made a transition of all of that pain and that risk from banks to taxpayers. In fact, they set up a steering committee. Check out who was on the steering committee. BNP said, let us help you figure it out. They had almost $6 billion in debt. Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank, ING, Allianz, all of these banks, German, French, Italian, they all set up these mechanisms for shifting the burden, again, from themselves onto the European taxpayer and America, by the way, through the IMF. These are some of the things they made up. The Greek loan facility, the European financial stability facility, the securities market program, the emergency liquidity assistance program, all of these alphabets, just all excuses from transferring the money from banks onto the shoulders of taxpayers. And that's why people around the world on the left and right gave the Greek people a cheer last night. They said, golly, the banks have gotten off scot-free once again at the taxpayer expense. And Tammy, people are fed up. It's resonating in this country with the Bernie Sanders of the world.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good example for everybody around the world. The ELAs, as you've mentioned also, they're making noise about maybe we should kind of help Greece, for a few days. But all that means is it comes directly from the taxpayer. This is a really good education for those who are 20 years old, who think that there's a money tree somewhere, there's the god of Kasharama, where money rains down from the sky, that it comes from somewhere and it comes from the individual. Now, banks are a good thing. They can be helpful. But when governments...
But bad behavior must be punished.
Yes. And so when you have governments that arrange this, you're going to, frankly, see some of this dynamic. And I think that if, in fact, banks have to hurt a little bit without collapsing, maybe that's going to have to happen.
Well, here's the thing, Steve. We know in 2001, Greece came into the EU. Then they revealed 3 years later we lied. We lied on our application, sort of like those liar loan things that we had in this country. And they lied with the help of Goldman Sachs. Listen, banks are a good thing, but at the end of the day, in a capitalistic society, if you fail as a business, you should be allowed to fail. Every time the banks seem to get off scot-free, and this is making people around the world, I think they should be rightfully upset.
Well, and here's the sad thing, Charles. It gives populists ammunition to attack capitalism, but they're not really attacking capitalism. They're attacking what is a facade of capitalism. This is crony capitalism at its absolute worst. And by the way, I'm glad Tammy mentioned young people, because nobody suffers more from crony capitalism than young people. Yet, paradoxically, they seem to support this very administration in this country that is so entrenching and promoting crony capitalism. But a vibrant, dynamic, entrepreneurial capitalism is what lifts young people and what lifts countries to new heights. Greece is emblematic of what is going on globally and within our country, which is protecting and choosing winners. And that is a problem long-term for growth. But I'm optimistic. Right. Again, America is different. We will overcome this.
Well, I don't know how different we were in the last financial crisis, because we bailed out the banks. And listen, we can debate whether it worked or not, because there were so many facilities. You thought that was a lot of alphabets? If we ever took all the different alphabet soup of all the different things we had in this country, we need a 2-hour program, Jim. But ultimately, Main Street's not getting any real loans. It's tough to get a loan to buy a house. And again, we bailed out the banks at the taxpayer expense.
Oh, absolutely. We absolutely did bail out the bank, and the recovery has been a recovery that's lopsided towards the wealthy, not towards the average person. What's going to be very interesting in the presidential campaign that we're going into is whether we have a broader discussion here. Are we going down the road of the socialist road like Steve was talking about? Do we want to veer more to the right and more back to the center? I haven't heard the dialogue yet from the Republicans. You're hearing it from the Democrats to go further in that direction.
Sure.
I want to see what the Republicans have to say.
And it's so far, listen, we know that this is going to be probably the key. Both sides, though, are acknowledging Hillary, income inequality. The argument is what creates it and what will solve it. I think it's these sort of policies that makes income inequality worse. Nevertheless, it seems to play for the architects of it, the Democrats so far.
Well, the Fed is really really to blame here. I mean, the Fed has just, with their money that
Right.
they've continued to print, and no one can make even 1%
Guys,
at the
while
bank.